Thanks, Ben. Good morning, all. This is a presentation of the new features of Unit 4 Financials 2020 Q2, which, as Ben has mentioned, is the new name for this release, not version 15. Before I start, let me explain that what I am about to show you is what is in the release notes for this version. However, some features have been introduced in later releases of version 14, so I've made a note of what that release number is on the slide. First, let's look at the technical infrastructure. There is now a warning displayed if the results of a browse have been limited by the security settings. What this means is that if the user is restricted to certain accounts in their capability settings, it will then warn the user that not all the data has been returned. As you can see on the slide, I have restricted the accounts payable user to all accounts except the sales ledger control account. Here you can actually see the warning. It is now possible to use the element master template to display the element during a workflow authorization within the show work item functionality. This will thus give the authorizer more informed information when deciding to approve the account. There is also now a new feature within the element history of an element called anonymized change log. What this does is removes personally identifiable information from any history and audit trail records for this element and satisfies GDPR. It will, for example, remove all address and bank details, tax VAT numbers, Social Security and federal IDs, and direct debit mandates. This is probably the most important new feature in Financials 2020. It is now possible to run the year end in two modes, provisional or full. Normally, a year end performs the following functions. It will sum all the profit and loss accounts and post the net figure to retained earnings in the balance sheet. It will then post the closing balance sheet figures to period 0 of the following year. It will finally close the year of the year end being processed, preventing any more postings. A provisional year end will perform all the processing of a full year end, but will not close the year end being the year being ended, allowing you to continue posting to that year. Any subsequent year-end processing will perform incremental postings for any postings applicable to the year-end being ended, with an input date greater than the date specified for the last provisional year-end. What this means in practice is that you, for example, if your year-end is 31st of December, you can run a year-end before the 30th of January in provisional mode, so that your balance type reports will capture carried forward balances in period 0 when you run period end reports for period 1. You can now undo both provisional and full year ends. This will cancel all year end journals posted to the final 9999 period for the latest year in which a year end has been run, and to the opening period of the next year. If a full year end is undone, the minimum year will be reset to the previous year. Note that the undo year end process undoes all the year ends that have been run in the selected year, not just the last year-end process itself. So, if you undo the year 2019 in 2020, but had also run 2018 and 2017 year ends in 2020, it will undo 2017, 2018 and 2019. As explained earlier, there are some features in the release notes that have been inserted into later releases of version 14. This is one of them. It now allows you to do the following within Browse Transactions. You can restart, cancel, and view the history of the workflow of a document. You can also copy a document. Like Browse Details, you can drill to the account summary. You can also edit line comments in the related information panel. And you can also raise corrective journals. Browse Transactions is a more powerful way to interrogate the database as you are using metadata. So Unit 4 is developing this feature and giving it at least the same functionality as Browse Details. An address category can now be specified on the Procurement tab to automate selection of the ordering address in Procurement. This overcomes an issue in purchasing. Previously, it was possible only to set one default address for a supplier record, and it was important that this was set correctly for remittances. This new feature allows multiple default addresses based on the function module. The actuals and turnover balance codes on the company master can now be changed after documents have been posted in the company. This is mainly for support purposes. No longer do you have to write a script if you forgot to add balance codes to the company master before posting transactions. If you do change or add the balance codes, you will now get a message to run the balance toolbox to update the maintained balances. In the Intercompany module, you can now add a customer or supplier to the control account specified in the destination and receiver masters. In the past, the Intercompany module has been what I call intracompany. It could not cope with companies that trade at arm's length with each other. That is, send and receive invoices to each other. What this means in practice is that one company can now send a sales invoice document to another company, and it will be received as a purchase invoice document. Unfortunately, it cannot send a tax line to the other company. You can now view the primary attachment directly via the primary attachment presenter vocabulary within the browser itself. In the past, you had to view it through the Actions button, which involved a few clicks of the mouse. The payment period and/or date can now be changed on a payment proposal after it has been generated by a new option, Change Payment Period, on the Pay Collect Actions menu. This feature is controlled by functional security on the Capability Master. There are times when a proposal can take some time to process, so this feature allows you to amend the payment period or date without aborting the proposal. Reconciliation will now record the date of reconciliation. This will default to today's date unless a date is set via the reconciliation master or at runtime. The finance user that ran the reconciliation process will be recorded as the reconciliation user. And the reconciliation date and user are also available as vocabularies for use in Selector and Presenter Masters for use in reconciliation reports. There are also some new features added to the Copy Company function with Financials. Element FlexiField data is now copied when using Copy Company to copy elements. Element template customizations can now be copied when using Copy Company to copy element template masters. There are also some new features in the other modules. For example, a scheduled task can now be set up to depreciate assets. This was one of the features released in a late version of version 14. It is now possible to input a non-matchable invoice or credit note where the invoice total is a different sign to the tax total. LRN housekeeping can now be run without posting a journal to finance. Now, this is a new feature that resolves an issue that has troubled Millennium clients for some time. In the past, a journal was posted to finance when running housekeeping, which meant that he had to cancel the document. Also, if the right lists had been changed in financials since the receipt of the goods, it meant that the housekeeping failed. This feature resolves all these issues. Orders that are automatically created by conversion from a requisition can now be automatically submitted to workflow so that a manual step to browse and limit and submit to workflow is not required. In the new billing module released at version 14, it is now possible to copy a document in Browse. Code Excel is now fully compatible with 64-bit Excel in addition to the 32-bit variant. Looking at the administration module, there are now 2 new web services available. Generic Browse Select Chunked and Generic Browse Fetch. This enables queries of exceptionally large data sets within an interface to be spread over multiple requests. There are also changes to eCustomizer. The customizations are now held within the actual database under table com screen cus. As you know, they used to be held as cus files on the web server. You can also now export and import customizations. This is a brief overview of the main new features in Financials 2020.